Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Maria Ramos. Now, it's been called the modern incarnation of the ancient Silk Road, a trade route by land and sea that connected most of the known world at the time. Now, it's being dubbed the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI for short. Simply put, it's a colossal plan by China to redirect global trade towards the second largest economy. Billed as a $1 trillion spending project, it will encompass roads, high-speed rails and ports covering nearly 2/3 of the world's population and 71 countries. It's absolutely huge. Now, you're probably wondering how it will be financed. Well, a vast majority of those building plans will be financed by Chinese loans. And this fact is a prospect that many countries, especially the US, are warning against. They say that the lure of cheap credit is simply a debt trap in disguise. Now, to calm those fears, Chinese President Xi Jinping recently hosted dozens of world leaders in Beijing. He signed $64 billion in BRI-related deals. And Xi also tried to hammer down that his plan would be about sustainability, transparency and the environment. Right now, the latest agreements push total investment in the Belt and Road Initiative so far to just under $100 billion. And you're probably wondering what's the link to Turkey? Well, Chinese investments and loans are being channeled into Turkey's renewable energy sector, which are expected to soar in the coming years. So, are fears of a Chinese debt trap real? And if so, just how vulnerable is Turkey to the prospects of cheap credit to fund grand infrastructure projects? So, to discuss this further, I'm joined by Altay Atli, who is a lecturer at Koç University and also partner at Reanda, Turkey. And also joining me in the studio is Murat Kolbasi. He's the chairman of the Turkish chapter at Turkey-China Business Council. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on Straight Talk. So, Murat, I want to start with you. Set the scene for us. How involved is Turkey in the Belt and Road Initiative? And I just want to quote you, actually. You recently said the entry of 2 Chinese banks in Turkey and the acquisition of a port by a Chinese investors shows China will expand its investments and business operations in Turkey. Sounds very busy.
Yes, it seems to be. Thank you very much for this opportunity, first of all. Of course, China is creating one of the, I say, wave from east to west. Because after the Second World War, we see a lot of wave coming from west to east. But that time is a little bit different. But actually, when you look to the historical way, you can see the Silk Road. And Turkey is one of the last country for the Silk Road in the Asian continent. So today, with a new and the modern Silk Road, we called Belt and Road Initiative, and it is a huge number and huge trade we are talking about, and more than 70 countries involved about that Belt and Road Initiative. Of course, Turkey is quite important for different angles. One of them is logistic-wise, which you mentioned about the port. Of course, also the other one is a trade, because Turkey is one of the hub points for the 3 continents. So that's why after that 2 banks acquired from Chinese, actually one of them is created completely new bank. So after that, more than 1,000 Chinese companies registered in Turkey, and they do some activities in Turkey. They acquire companies, they create new offices, they also invest in Turkey. So the investment of China increasing day by day in Turkey. This is also another option. And of course, Turkey is also another one of the hub for China for manufacturing facilities because of from east of Germany to the west of China, Turkey is one of the largest and very important manufacturing plant or facilities. What we have right now is quite important for the worldwide operation. So that's why Turkish companies and China companies came together and created a good, let's say, result for that. Of course, there is some threat and difficulties.
And I'm going to talk about that.
There's also opportunities there.
There's also opportunities. Now, let's talk about the threats, the criticism, because there's been a lot coming from the US. The Vice President Mike Pence has called it debt trap diplomacy. Are these concerns justified?
Yeah, well, there's for sure a lot of capital, a lot of finance flowing from China to these countries, to those countries where Chinese companies themselves are undertaking large infrastructure projects. And of course, after some point, these loans will have to be paid back with interest, of course. So, but can we call it a debt trap? I'm not sure about that because, well, one thing is, I mean, this money is coming, these loans are coming for a reason. It's based on mutual benefits, actually. The Chinese side is expecting some returns, for sure. And other countries who are said to be targeted by this debt trap diplomacy are actually, well, doing this because they have certain needs, especially these are countries who are suffering from significant infrastructure gap. So they have to do that. Well, can the financing process, can the debt process, can the loaning process be more transparent? Probably it can. But is it a debt diplomacy? Is it a debt trap? I'm not so sure about that. If we are talking about a debt, if we are talking about a trap, I think maybe I can say that we should talk about a hypocritical trap here.
Really?
So, well, simply because the same countries who are criticizing this process, or let's say those same governments who are criticizing process, actually they have more financial, they higher, more intensive financial relations with China. I mean, if we talk America...
Who's criticizing exactly? Because we've heard very strong criticism from the US.
You gave the example of the US. It's the same country whose 1.2 or $3 trillion worth of government bonds are actually owned by Chinese. So they are indebted to China as well. Okay. Or we have seen, for example, even Italy was targeted by this from the rest of the European Union, and it went as far as calling, Italy like a Trojan horse inside the European Union because they have signed a memorandum of understanding with China. But again, the same European countries who are doing this critic is actually they have bigger financial relations with China. So I think this debt trap rhetoric is more like a political discourse rather than an economic fact.
Okay. And your concerns, Altay, about debt trap, should Turkey be concerned at all?
Of course, we have to make a right decision for the future. Debt trap is not an exact word also for the economic wise. As a businessman, I don't want to be called like that because for European Union or the other association, including Belt and Road, nobody putting a gun to our head to us to join that. So if you don't like it, you don't enter them. So that's why you have to make a decision together with the good evaluation, and then for your future, for country, for your company, even for personal things, you have to make a right decision after the calculation. This is a very critical issue.
Did Sri Lanka make a good decision, a good calculation, because its port was taken over by China because it couldn't repay its debts? And I know this is just one example of this scenario.
Sri Lanka is one of the cases, but also there is another cases I can bring for the Pakistan. For example, Gwadar is one of the important area. I mean, the port. Also, Cairo is also another important port which I have already visited. So the thing is, in the businessman angle, what I say, calculate the issue, what come to you, and end of the day, if you join, what is the benefit for Turkey? Yeah. What is the threat for Turkey? Can we manage? If we can manage, if we can get a positive result end of the day, we can join. If not, we still continue to negotiate because through Belt and Road, Turkey is quite an important country because of geographical wise.
Murat, benefits and threats for Turkey?
Yeah, benefits and threats. Well, to start with, as I said before, this project, this initiative is all about mutual interest. So if everybody is winning from this project, this initiative will go forward. So, and from the Turkish perspective, so what can we expect from this? I think we are still at the stage of expectations. So it is yet to take off. Well, we have seen, of course, certain projects, like there's a port project. There are some railway projects, in the pipeline, which are waiting to be finalized and so on. Well, I think what Turkey can benefit from this whole thing is to start with, it's about infrastructure. Turkey has an infrastructure gap as well. For its economic, sustainable economic growth, Turkey needs, better, more improved logistics infrastructure. And here is an opportunity window for this.
All right, gentlemen, and we'll have to leave this discussion here. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Straight Talk. Altay Atli and Murat Kolbasi, thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much.